So I recently just finished up an entire month in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I have to say, it was one of the best trips that I've taken so far. Now, it actually coincided with the FIFA World Cup, which made my experience that much better. So today I'm going to be breaking down some of what I've experienced day to day, as well as how much you can expect to spend on different things while there in Buenos Aires. So if that's one that interests you, be sure you stay tuned. Now, for those of you guys who are new to the channel, my name is Tommy Boboy. I'm currently traveling throughout the world 1 month at a time. And what I mean by that is that I go from different city to city around the world, living there for at minimum 1 month. Okay. Now this is great because it gives me a chance to be able to experience the city while also being able to continue to work from my laptop. Now this video is going to specifically focus on me and my time in Argentina, but I've shot plenty of them from me in Guatemala, for example, and I'm actually going to be working and I'm currently in Colombia. So I'll be releasing one from Cartagena, Colombia as well. So be sure that you follow along with our playlist that I'm going to be releasing as I continue along these trips. Now, a quick intro into Argentina, the country itself. Argentina is a country that's actually located down in South America. It is the world's 8th largest country, and it takes up more space than Mexico and Texas combined. So it's arguably the country that has pretty much helped lead to the independence of other countries in South America. Argentina has a diverse culture. It's influenced by its European heritage and indigenous peoples, and also immigrants from around the world that have come and made Argentina their home. Now, the country is known for its tango music and dance, as well as its beef and wine. Now, Argentina has a rich history, including periods of military dictatorship and economic turmoil, but has also produced the world-renowned figures such as Eva Perón and Lionel Messi. Now, overall for me, my experience was amazing. It was definitely one of the moments I felt the most integrated in a city, which is quite a surprise considering normally I'm only there for about a month or so. One of the toughest things about traveling that I've found is that it's almost like you have to make a new social circle, right? You got to find a new friends group. You got to find all the people that you're used to talking to or interacting with throughout your daily life. You pretty much have to meet new versions of that everywhere you go. Whether it's the person that you know, that the cashier at the grocery store that you always see and you guys always chat about your lives, or the attendant at the gas station, right? Whatever the case may be, every time I'm traveling and I go to new places, I now have to make new friends essentially. Now, Argentina, I felt the most comfortable in it, and really I was able to assimilate completely. And it was great because I had a pickup basketball team that I met up with. I had language groups that I was meeting up with. It really felt like I was in this community and I was fully integrated. I felt like I had been living there for a year, 2 years, whatever the case may be, even though I'd only been there for a month in total. Now, I went on my trip towards the end of November and got a chance to actually experience the World Cup matches in Argentina around that same time, right? It all happened between November and December of 2022. Now, quite honestly, that was not really planned. I knew the World Cup was coming, but I didn't think much of it in terms of that wasn't like a thought in my head of, oh, I should go to a city that might win the World Cup, even though Argentina ended up winning in the very end. Now, the city of Buenos Aires did a great job of actually setting up events for the World Cup. It was crazy because they essentially blocked off an entire city park, one of their bigger city parks that they have, though they have a ton of them in the city. And what they did was they set up huge, big screens where you could actually come and you could watch every single World Cup game. They also have food trucks as well as some museum style areas. You got to see sort of behind the scenes on how the locker rooms would be for Argentinian team while they were in Qatar. So that was pretty dope as well. My overall experience was great. There were some issues with the economy that affected some aspects of my trip, and I'll dive a lot deeper into that here in a little bit. But overall, the experience was amazing. Now, first, I'm going to jump into rent. I'll break down exactly where I stayed while I was out there, how much it cost, and my views on each of the different locations that I was at. I was actually moving around quite a bit, and that was because I had a few issues whenever I first arrived there in terms of the hotel that I had gotten ended up being mislabeled through the website that I purchased it on. So it ended up not even being in the correct city. So I had to scramble to try to find accommodations, and that's what led to me kind of hopping around the early few weeks that I was there. Now, the first Airbnb that I had was actually an Airbnb that I only stayed in for 2 days until there was more availability actually in the city of Buenos Aires. So this one was actually located in a city called Quilmes. And funny enough, this is a big brewery town. One of the local beers in Argentina is called Quilmes, and it actually comes from this city that's literally, I would say probably 15-20 minutes, if not less, outside of Buenos Aires. Now, my host was super dope. She was great. When it came to the cost, I ended up paying about $120, a little less than $120. And for me, it was a really dope Airbnb. it had this sort of a architectural theme to it. Now the owner was actually an architect, and I think that this was more likely her office, and she rents it out for Airbnb from time to time. Now me personally, I wouldn't recommend this place for long-term stays. One, because it's out of the city, and two, because I was pretty much sleeping on the couch. The couch converted into a bed, but for me, it was perfect for if you're just planning on staying a few days, or maybe you want to visit the city of Quilmes and you want to be out there, then that's not a bad place to stay. Now, after a few days, I moved back into the city and stayed in another place for about a week. Now, I wanted to stay actually in this place for a month, but the owner wasn't able to make it work. It had everything I needed, and it was actually a pretty decent spot. It was just the owner could only accommodate a week, and during that week he was gonna tell me if he was gonna be able to extend it to the full month, but it just wasn't able to work out because of things that he had going on with his work. It's an Airbnb, but he's actually was living out of it at the time. So this one was located in a neighborhood called Retiro, and it was so well located. I could literally walk out of the Airbnb and had access to large hub of local bus transportation and even the taxis waiting on the main street. So this place was extremely dope. Now, when it came to the cost, this thing would cost me about $317. You could say, let's say $318 for short, and that was for 8 days. Now, when it comes to my views, guys, it was a pretty great location. It had a great host. The host was amazing. I really felt like I could easily access many different parts of Buenos Aires just from this, because it was such a fairly central location. They even had actually one of their more popular parks that was just not too far outside of my house. It was probably about like 5 minutes walking up the street. So that was pretty dope as well. Now, the third Airbnb, this was my main Airbnb. And guys, by the way, I usually don't do this. I'm usually not hopping around in different Airbnbs. I usually find one place and I stick to it. Kind of like what I'm doing here in Cartagena, like you'll see in my next video when I shoot about this place. My main Airbnb, this is where I ended up staying for an entire month, this third one. Now, this one was located in a neighborhood called Recoleta, and it is one of the nicer neighborhoods in Buenos Aires. It's pretty much, there's two main neighborhoods that you want to stay in, Recoleta, and I'm forgetting the name of the other one, but this was pretty much the second. It's a lot more calm than the other option, the other neighborhood, but it was a dope neighborhood nonetheless. Now, when it came down to the cost, I ended up paying about $1,100, just over $1,100, and that was for 1 month. Now, when it comes to my views, this place was perfectly situated as well. There was a few parks nearby. There was a large open air seating area that was literally surrounded by restaurants just down the street, and everyone was also super friendly to me, you know, just around my neighborhood. There was a college campus literally pretty much catty corner from where I was living. So whenever I'd walk outside, I would always see like younger folks, you know, having fun or whatever, super chill, super nice to talk to, everything. And they were great because they were able to help me find different things that I might have wanted to do in the area as well. So that was pretty cool. Also down the street from me was one of the most famous bookstores in the world. Now, Buenos Aires, or at least this bookstore, claims that it is the #1 bookstore in the world. It's called El Ateneo, if I'm not butchering the name, but this bookstore was definitely amazing to say the least. Okay, so I definitely see where they're going with that, with the actual bookstore itself, but that was just a few of the things that were around me. The thing with Buenos Aires is there was so much to do in the city. I felt like I was even running out of time in terms of the stuff I wanted to do. Normally, whenever I go to a city, I might try to do things outside of the city. I'll try to find a few different excursions and things that I can do, which we'll touch on here in a little bit, but it was a lot tougher with Buenos Aires because there was just so much to do in the city, and I was just starting to run out of time, especially with the World Cup going on as well. Now, again, guys, if you like these types of videos that I shoot when I tell you guys about sort of what I'm spending month to month, be sure that you hit the subscribe button, as I'll be making a playlist and releasing these hopefully once a month or once every other month, depending on how consistent I can stay. But my goal is to be able to shoot this one video like this at least once a month. I want to quickly touch on the economy. Now, they have a huge inflation issue here in the country. Now, what that means is that the money loses value very quickly, okay? And so the public sentiment when it comes to the Argentinian peso is not very strong. So what a lot of people end up doing is they end up exchanging their Argentinian pesos that they, the money that they earn from work, they end up exchanging it for US dollars and holding on to US dollars. That way their money is able to hold value. Now, because of this, and the government has tried to do things to be able to, kind of hold the currency up and keep it from continuing to inflate. And they have now done some things to sort of manipulate the currency, okay? Or manipulate the conversion rate with the currency. So what I found out when I got there very quickly was that there was an official rate and there was an unofficial or blue dollar rate for their currency. And so what that meant was I pretty much couldn't use any debit or any credit cards there. I had to actually either come with a bunch of cash and then try to exchange my cash, or I had to do other techniques like sending myself money through Western Union, for example, that could provide you this unofficial exchange rate. If you chose to actually use the official rate, if you chose to swipe your credit card or swipe your debit card, you would end up paying pretty much double for everything. So you would lose pretty much 50% right off the bat. So it didn't make any sort of sense for you to use your debit card. So what that meant was there was always a long lines at Western Unions. Literally, I spent hour and a half in a line in Western Union just waiting to be able to get some cash that I had sent myself. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the issues that I had when I ran into it. But really, other than that, everything went pretty smoothly while I was out there. Now, what I'll do also is I'll throw up a picture of the money. Now, that was another issue, was like, if I went and withdrew just, let's say, $300, imagine what 300 US dollars is. In pesos, it could literally be like a stack of money. I saw some people who would withdraw $1,000 and they would come in with backpacks, right? Because they would have to stuff all of this money in their backpack. So it kind of made me a little paranoid. Luckily, I live right around the corner from Western Union, so I didn't have to worry about running into any issues, but that's something to keep in mind. Now let's talk about the food. I was able to go to a few local restaurants there, and the thing is, you find a wide variety of restaurants in Buenos Aires. So I went to, for example, a Venezuelan restaurant, which was super dope. Now they gave me ribs with rice, fries, a salad, and even a soup on the side. And another thing I ended up not taking a picture of, because at that point it came towards the end of the meal, was my beans, okay? So on top of that, I even got beans. And the crazy thing is, all that cost me 1,300 Argentinian pesos, which comes out, at the time, came out to about $4. So that goes to show you how cheap the food was there. I realized that pretty much in terms of spending, this is one of the cheaper countries that I had been to, but also one of the more developed countries I had been to. So it was a super great mix of pretty much the benefits of both sides that you really don't see in most countries. Now, another thing I got was a grilled chicken sandwich with fries. This was at a local restaurant, just literally on the street, like on the side of the street next to a fair that I was currently at. I ended up paying 1,700 pesos, Argentinian pesos, for this sandwich, and it was about $5. Now, more on the higher end restaurant, or I would say more of like, compared to like, if you go to McDonald's versus you're going to like In-N-Out Burger, or you're going to like Five Guys, right? It's kind of like they try to pitch themselves like kind of like another tier of burger, right? So it's going to be a little bit more, what's the word? A bit nicer of a burger. So you're going to pay a little bit more for it. It's kind of that idea when I mean higher end restaurant. So what I did is I went to more of a German restaurant, which was super dope. Amazing restaurant near my Airbnb in Retiro. And this restaurant, I ended up getting, they had a bunch of their like, German sausages, different types of German sausages. So I tried one plate, which had like 2 caramelized sausages with some fries and a little salad. And funny enough, I ordered a sangria with it as well. I ended up eating that whole meal, and I still felt a little, I don't want to say I was hungry, but I felt like I could eat a little more, but I wanted to wait a little bit. So what I decided to do was order a whole nother different meal, which was essentially the same type, right? It was different types of sausages, but it came with fries. I think the second one I ordered came with coleslaw and maybe a salad too. I can't quite remember. But me ordering all that food came out to 3,100 pesos, and that is about $9.50. So to me, I was amazed at how far my money was going while I was out there. Now, another place I went to was a pretty popular Argentinian steak restaurant, not too far from a little part of the city that I was visiting called La Boca. And there I got a meal for 2. I was there with a friend, and we got a meal for 2. We got multiple drinks. We even got shots, and then we even ordered waters on top of it. So in total, I paid 13,200 Argentinian pesos, which came out to $40. So that was super dope. Now, aside from those restaurants, I also ate at home, or I would either, make my own meals at home. So what I like to do is when I go to these countries, I like to also try to figure out what the local types of recipes are, or whatever the regional recipes are, and I'll try to see if I can cook those meals myself at the house. So I do cook at home as well. But if I'm not feeling like cooking, but I don't feel like necessarily going out to a restaurant, what I'll do is I'll actually order out. So I did a lot of ordering on their version of Uber Eats, which was called Pedidos Ya, which pretty much means like orders now, for example. And so this was super dope. Like, I typically didn't spend more than $10 per meal. And the great thing was they allowed me to pay in cash, which was super dope. If you kind of like what I was mentioning previously with the issue with the currency, I didn't want to have to use my debit card or a credit card. And that's kind of why I had stayed off of Uber. I typically try to use Uber Eats if I can, but I ended up using this Pedidos Ya app, which does pretty well. well too. And yeah, basically able to pay the person in cash whenever they showed up to the door, which was super dope. Next is transportation, guys. When it comes to transportation, I look at a few different modes of transportation. Now, one was Uber. My Uber rides were crazy cheap. It was literally, I was paying between $1.50 to $6 to get to most parts of the city. Okay, so I was literally just flying around town in Ubers and everything was good. Now, me though, I also like to try different modes of transportation. I like to see how are things if I ride on the bus, or are there other types of transportation that I could try out. So I'm always big about just trying out transportation to get a vibe of what it's like to be a local, right? And so I went and hopped on the buses, and the public transportation, the actual buses and the metro system is extremely well developed, guys. If you've been to Europe, for example, like a Paris or a Barcelona or Madrid, even in Italy, right? In Germany as well, you're gonna see that the train system runs pretty smoothly over there. This is what you can expect here in Argentina as well. They had a bus system and a train system that ran extremely well for me. Now, the funny thing is the transportation was extremely cheap too, of course. So I was paying around, let's say 10 cents per ride. So from time to time, I would just take the metro or the bus, just depending on how it was, especially when I was staying in the Retiro area. So the second Airbnb I had, the bus was literally right by my house. So the way that the streets are set up, my bus would arrive essentially at the same time as an Uber, or let's say a minute or 2 minutes after the Uber might arrive at the destination. It made more sense for me to ride a bus, especially if I knew the bus was one of those buses that pulled up every like 2 minutes or so, right? Now, I also did ride the taxis in town. Obviously, taxis are typically going to be more expensive, but transportation was so cheap, I didn't mind riding a taxi, even though it's slightly more expensive than the Ubers, because it was more than worth it based on the convenience. And what I mean by that is, if I order the Uber, I had to wait, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the case may be, for the Uber to pull up. But depending on where my house was, like typically pretty much all my Airbnbs, especially the last two that were actually in Buenos Aires, there was a lot of taxis coming through by where my house was. So I could literally just walk out and see a taxi, wave them down, and then be able to ride the taxi to wherever I needed to go. I might pay a little extra, let's say maybe it was 10% more or something, or 15% more, but it was way more than worth it, considering that already the prices were extremely cheap. It's like instead of you paying $1.50, now you're paying $1.65. It makes more sense for you to just hop in a taxi and just take the taxi. Now, when it comes to excursions, there was so much to do in the city, a lot of which I didn't even really get done, right? they had like this botanical garden, Japanese gardens. They have like a Chinatown that's really popular there, as well as La Boca, a city right outside. They even have a sort of boardwalk of sorts that they have called Puerto Madero that I went to as well. So there was a lot of different things that you could do inside the city. But in terms of excursions leaving out of the city, I didn't go to as many as I typically try to do, just because there was a lot going on in terms of what was in the city, but also because of the World Cup that was happening at the same time. So a lot of the days I was going to watch World Cup games, whether it was like the US games. Obviously, I'm trying to watch all the Argentina games or any other teams that are playing that I was interested in. Now, one place I did go get to check out was a place called Tigre. Tigre is literally, it's a town just north of Buenos Aires, not that far away. You can literally get there on train. It takes you about an hour to get out there. Now, what you can do is you can actually take tours of the river delta, and basically you see how there's all these houses that are literally right on the water, and you take a boat that just takes you around and tours you around, seeing how people are pretty much living on the water just outside of Buenos Aires, which was super dope. For a lot of families, those are more that are like summer homes. So whenever it's the summertime, you're gonna see a lot of them going out there and enjoying their time out there. And by the way, Argentina's summer is in December. So I was actually there during the summer, right? So they're on the other side of the equator, and so there's summers are flipped and their winters are actually in the June, July times. Now, the great thing is there's even hotels available too. So if you want to actually stay out in Tigre on the river delta, you find hotels or find accommodations out there for you to be able to stay a couple of days and along the water and be able to enjoy the water if you want to do that as well. When it comes to what I wish I would have done, y'all gonna find this crazy. Now, first, one of the reasons I had gone down there initially was because I wanted to actually get to Antarctica. Now, from Argentina, if you go down to the very south, like the southern tip of Argentina, from there you're able to catch boats that will take you across to Antarctica, which is extremely dope. That was originally my goal, was to try to do that, but one, I had run out of time, and two, I didn't expect how expensive it was going to be. I think it was going to be something like $10,000 or $20,000 to actually do the trip. But aside from Antarctica, I also wanted to do Patagonia. I wanted to go to visit like northern Argentina. There's a lot of dope cities up there as well, or dope villages out there. And there's a thing called Colonia, Uruguay. So basically, Uruguay is so close to Argentina that that you can actually take a ferry across to this town Colonia, and yeah, you're able to just go over there and visit, and pretty much you can easily knock out another country on your list if you want, as well as visit this dope city that they have there. A lot of people go there and they spend maybe the weekend or what have you before heading back to Argentina. So that was another thing that I wanted to do. There's quite a few. I have a long list of things that I plan on doing the next time that I'm back in town. But when I look at it in terms of my final thoughts, I think that this was probably one of the best trips that I've done, and that made me extremely happy. When it was my time to go, I felt fulfilled and happy to see that I'm kind of starting to see this progression, right? The more I'm traveling, the more I'm getting comfortable, and I'm really adapting very quickly. Even here, you know, I guess it's a kind of sort of a little sneak peek, but even in Cartagena, I'm in Cartagena, Colombia right now, and I'm having that similar experience where now I'm integrating a lot faster when it comes to places that I'm going. And so for me, that was amazing. That was a really dope experience. And really the trip as a whole was amazing, man. Like, I love Argentina. The Argentinian people were treating me super nice. I had a little issues with the Spanish in the beginning because of the, you know, obviously there's gonna be certain slangs and certain, think of it like dialects or ways that things are spoken here. But I quickly adapted. I think after the first week there, I was able to start understanding exactly and really picking up the way people were talking there. But guys, in a whole, I had such a blast and I enjoyed it so much. So this is definitely a country, one of my top countries. Buenos Aires is definitely on my list of my top 5 countries. I will 100% be back to Argentina soon, Buenos Aires soon. That's pretty much the gist of it, guys. So I thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys found this information valuable, and I hope that you guys take the time to enjoy these videos, and it kind of gives you a new perspective and makes you think that maybe you could be doing this too. Maybe you could travel to these countries. You hear bad things about a lot of places. I think a lot of reasons why people don't go down to Buenos Aires or go down to Argentina in general is because, one, you don't hear a lot about it, so maybe you're skeptical and assume the worst, or, you know, that's what we all do, right? If you hear negative stuff about a region, everybody in that region kind of gets wrapped into a hole, right? But Buenos Aires is, I felt extremely safe while I was down there, and I never had moments where I felt worried about anything. So that was dope. And it was one of the most developed, if not the most developed country that, or a city that I've seen in South America as a whole. So that was pretty dope as well. And I think that part of the reason that Americans don't really go down there is the flight's pretty long. I think it was about 10 hours from Dallas to get down there. So that's something to think about. But definitely, for me, I think it's definitely a worthwhile place to go check out, especially if you're trying to go on a break during our winter time in the States, in the US. They're in their summer, so instead of you going to Europe, you in the freezing cold trying to look at the Eiffel Tower, you can literally head down south to Argentina and experience the summers there. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Be sure that you stay tuned. Again, I'm gonna be shooting pretty soon this video of where I am here, right? A video just like this of me in Cartagena, Colombia, that I know you guys are gonna love. It's been crazy out here, probably even more crazier than it was in Buenos Aires. So I hope you stay tuned, and be sure you check out this playlist. I'm gonna link to it down below that has my other videos as well. And I appreciate you guys continuing to watch, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.